The Nakata Ninja and Ninja run was kind of easy, so today I'm going to answer the question, can you beat Pokemon Ruby with only Milotic? Having a quick look at Milotic's stats, it's got high special attack and super high special defense. It actually has the same stats as Gyarados, just put into different places, because if you didn't know, they're actually counterparts. But anyways, before we start this run, let's go over some quick rules. I can only use Milotic in battle, I can use HM Pokemon but not in battle, no glitches or exploits, no items in battle with the exception of held items. And with no further ado, let's begin this run. First things first, I use the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to change Mudkip into Milotic. I then take on the Poochyena who goes down to 1 Water Gun. And then as always, the Professor lets me keep Milotic. It's a female Milotic with a sassy nature, which is plus special defense minus speed, which isn't horrible. I then take on my rival thinking it would be super easy. I open with Wrap for additional damage, but it misses. I connect a Wrap this second turn and start spamming Water Gun. This first fight was a bit of a slog and took me about 7 minutes to complete. I end up winning thanks to the Wrap damage. In the Petalburg Woods, I fight my first Magma Grunt. I open with Water Gun and Poochyena lives on about 50%, and one unnecessary crit later, I beat the Grunt. The first gym in this challenge is Roxanne. I had a feeling she'd be quite easy. She opens with Geodude, who goes down to 1 Water Gun. She then sends out Nosepass, who I Wrap to break the Sturdy and Water Gun the following turn. In hindsight, the Wrap wasn't really necessary as Nosepass would have lived the first Water Gun anyways. Roxanne spams potions to keep Nosepass around, but a few turns later, I leave victorious. I then rescue Pico from the Magma Grunt and it's off to fight Brawly. I open with Water Gun against the Machop, who goes down in about 3 shots. He then brings out Makuhita and I use a Wrap. He goes for Arm Thrust and connects all 5 times. I gain back a little health with an Oran Berry and go for Water Gun, luckily landing a critical hit. Lucky for me, Makuhita uses a Bulk Up, ensuring it's knocked out the next turn. That was a super scary fight. I hand the letter to Steven, then take on the 2 Magma Grunts in Slateport City. Now it's time to fight Brandon for the second time. Brandon leads with Numble. I open with Water Pulse, which OHKOs. He then brings out Grovyle, who uses Absorb. I go for Wrap for some chip damage. We then start to exchange Absorbs and Water Pulses until eventually Grovyle goes down. His last Pokemon is Wailmer, who I Wrap and Water Pulse for the victory. I come across Wally outside the gym, and Rotz gets one shot by Water Pulse. Watson attempt 1. I open with Water Pulse, but Magnemite hangs on and paralyzes me. Watson then heals, and we go through a cycle of being paralyzed and confused. I think I'm going to need to level here. I grind for a little bit in a patch of grass and gain 1 level, then rare-keying myself to level 29. Watson attempt 2. I open with Water Pulse, knocking out the Magnemite in 1 shot. He then swaps out Voltorb, who gets crit by a Water Pulse. Last is Magneton. Magneton takes about 50% from a Water Pulse and paralyzes me. Magneton then outspeeds me and shockwaves me, doing very little. I connect the Water Pulse, winning the battle. Next I take on Maxie and Mount Chimney. Maxie leads Mightyena. Mightyena lives a Water Pulse, Maxie heals, and I set up a Rain Dance. I miss 2 Water Pulses in a row due to Sand Attack, lowering my accuracy. I then use Water Gun, which takes out Mightyena in 2 turns. Golbat comes out taking a Water Pulse, getting confused. It connects a Wing Attack through confusion but goes down to a Water Gun the next turn. Last out is Camerupt, who gets 1 shot by Water Pulse. I make my way to Lava Ridge Town to take on Flannery. I Water Gun both her Slugmas for 1-shot kills. I then Water Pulse her Torkoal for another easy 1-shot kill. After defeating Flannery, I make my way to the desert and collect the Claw Fossil. I then pick up the TM for Toxic, which will come in handy in my next gym battle. Now onto Norman. Norman opens with Slacking and I use Toxic. Toxic connects, then I get hit with a now boosted Facade. I then use Hydro Pump, which takes out Slacking. Vigoroth comes out and a critical hit Water Pulse takes it out. Another Slacking goes for Focus Energy while I Hydro Pump. Slacking gets Strunt the next turn and I take it out with a Water Pulse. Before I take on Winona, I get the TM for Ice Beam, which I'll also need for Drayden. Before Winona, I have to quickly defeat Admin Courtney and Brandon, whose teams get 1 shot. Now we can take on Winona. She leads with Swellow, who gets 1 shot by Surf. Pelipper comes out and takes about 65% from Surf. It then connects a Supersonic. Pelipper tries to double protect but fails while I see through confusion, landing in an Ice Beam. She then sends out Skarmory, who also gets 1 shot by Surf. Then out comes Altaria, who gets 1 shot by an Ice Beam. Our last Brandon fight was Breeze. He opens with Swellow, who gets 1 shot with Surf. He then brings out Grovyle, who gets 1 shot by Ice Beam. Then Numble comes out, who I misclick an Ice Beam, luckily knocking it out. Last is Wailmer, who I critical hit with a Hydro Pump. I take on Admin Tabitha and the Magma Hyena and 1-shot his Numble, Mightyena, and Camelrupt. This Tate and Liza fight should be really easy. I'll just spam Surf. I open with Surf, which knocks out Solrock, but Lunatone lives. Lunatone knocks out the Zigzagoon and heals the next turn. I then go for Surf, which again critical hits, 1-shotting the Lunatone. I'm being a lot of crits this run. Next up we have our last Maxi fight. He leads Mightyena, who gets 1 shot by a Hydro Pump. Then comes in Crobat, who hits an Air Cutter but gets taken out by a Surf. Last in is Camerupt, who gets taken out by a Hydro Pump. I then fight Groudon in the Cave of Origin and take him out in 2 Surfs. Now onto the final gym member, Wallace. Wallace and Glacier were the main 2 reasons I picked up Toxic. Wallace leads Love Disc and lives a Surf, then heals up. I Surf again, which it lives on like 1 HP, then Ice Beam for the knockout. He then brings out Whiscash, who gets one shot by a Hydro Pump. Leo comes out and I Toxic. I go for Surf, which Leo eats, then he body slams me and I get paralyzed. I Surf again, taking out the Leo. I then Hydro Pump the King, taking him out. Last is Milotic. I connected Toxic on Milotic, then Hydro Pump the next turn. Wallace heals Milotic and I get paralyzed twice in a row. 1 Surf later and a bunch of poison damage takes out Milotic. Once Wallace is defeated, I go around collecting a bunch of PP ups for the Elite Four. But before the Elite Four, we've got to take on Wally. Wally leads Altaria, who gets one shot by Ice Beam. He then sends out Magneton, who gets taken out by a Surf. Roselia goes down to an Ice Beam, and Delcatty a Surf. Last in is Gardevoir, who easily takes a Surf and then double teams. I go for one more Surf, knocking out the Gardevoir. Let's look at Milotic before we take on the Elite Four. Milotic is level 64 and has Surf, Ice Beam, Hydro Pump, and Toxic. I'm feeling pretty confident, so let's begin. First is Sydney. He leads Mightyena, who gets one shot by Surf. I Ice Beam the Cacturn and Surf the Sharpedo, knocking them both out. Next is Absol, who gets taken out by 1 Surf. Out comes his ace Shiftry, who I Ice Beam, taking him out. Member number 2 is Phoebe. She leads Dusclops, who lives the Surf on about 1 HP, then curses me, which isn't good. It's pretty much a speedrun at this point. I quickly take out her next 3 Pokemon with Surf, but her last Dusclops lives a Hydro Pump. I'm going to have to try again. Attempt 2. Again she leads Dusclops, who lives another Surf, and curses. A Surf takes out both Banette and Sableye. She brings out another Banette, who I Surf again, gaining a level in the process. I then barely hang on due to the curse damage, then critical hit a Hydro Pump, knocking out the Dusclops. Member 3 is Glacier. Glacier is one of the main reasons I end up getting Toxic. She leads Glalie, who lives a Surf, then crunches. She heals the next turn while I Toxic. I take out her next 3 Pokemon without a problem, but then she sends out Walrein. I Toxic the Walrein as I have no effective moves, but I miss. Walrein hits a Blizzard, freezing me in the process. I'll need to try again. Glacier attempt 2. She leads Glalie, who gets one shot by Surf. She brings out Leo, who I Toxic, then Surf to death. Another Leo comes out and I set up Toxic, but I miss, and they set up the Hail. A combination of Surf and Hydro Pump takes out the Leo. She brings out another Glalie, who gets one shot by Surf. Last out again is Walrein. I go for Toxic, luckily connecting while Walrein body slams. I get a critical hit on Hydro Pump, which after poison takes it down to red health, which isn't what I want. I Surf again, doing about 25%. I Toxic for a second time while it body slams. She then heals for a second time. I Surf and Hydro Pump again. She hits a body slam which paralyzes me. I then luckily live a Blizzard at 15 HP and connect a Surf. Boy, was that stressful. The last member of the Elite Four is Drayden, and I'll be honest, this battle was super easy. So I'll do a speed round for you. He leads Shelgon, who gets taken out by an Ice Beam. I then Ice Beam Altaria, Flygon, and another Flygon. Last up is Salamence, who is 4 times weak to Ice. I connect an Ice Beam, taking out Salamence. It is now Champion time. Champion Steven leads Skarmory, who gets one shot by Surf. He then swaps in Aggron, who also gets one shot by Surf. Next is Cradily, who lives a Hydro Pump on about 10% and confuses me. Steven then full restores Cradily and I hurt myself with Confusion. Next turn I hit myself again while Cradily Giga Drains. I then snap out of Confusion. 2 Surfs later, Cradily is knocked out. Out comes Claydol, who gets one shot by Surf. He then brings out Metagross. Metagross takes a Hydro Pump and EQs me. He heals a little bit with Citrus Berry, but gets taken out by Surf the following turn. Last is Almoldo, who gets one shot by Surf. And that's it. That answers the question, can you beat Pokemon Ruby with only Milotic? To be honest, this was kind of easy. Nothing took me more than about 2 or 3 attempts. I had to run through the Elite Four like 2 or 3 times, obviously losing to Phoebe and Glacier back to back, so yeah. Next week's video should be a bit exciting. It's going to be an IRL video in Pokemon Go. And then the week after that, it's either going to be a mystery dungeon or a beating Pokemon, I think Sapphire with Ash Ketchum's team from the anime. So stick around for that. If you made it this far into the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. I don't know who we are. But yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.